Good evening, everybody. Welcome. So we're going to start this evening with a public meeting that is related to the tax write-offs pursuant to sections 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act. And so that is the first section of our business tonight. Any member of the public who is here who wishes to speak to this item in particular, whose properties are affected by the tax write-offs, is welcome to do so at this time. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. So I'd like to call this meeting to order, meeting of the Administrative Policies Committee. First, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Sanik. All those in favor? Excellent. Next, we need a motion to confirm our minutes from the last two meetings, July 4th and August 9th. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Stroud, seconded by Councillor Sanik. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Are there any disclosures of potential pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. We have no delegations this evening, and we have no briefings. So we'll move into our business. The first item is tax write-offs pursuant to the Municipal Act, and we will hear from our CFO and City Treasurer, Desiree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam. So this first report is the tax write-offs that are pursuant to Section 357 of the Municipal Act, as well as Section 358. This is the standard report that the committee sees 3 to 4 times a year. And so Exhibit A does provide some detail on the particular properties with a total write-off of just over $50,000 that we're recommending.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments on the report? Okay, seeing none. Call these. Okay, great. Are there any public comments on this report? So this is any member of the public whose properties are not affected or affected and didn't speak before? No? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. We do have a recommendation here that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend that Council hereby authorizes the City Treasurer.
Sorry, we're on A.
Whoops, I'm on the first one? Yep. Okay, so that this committee recommend that Council approve the cancellation, reduction, or refund of taxes pursuant to applications made under sections 357 and 358 of the Municipal Act 2001, totaling $54,382.51, of which $41,928.04 is the city's portion, and the amount charged back to the school boards is $12,554.47, as listed in Exhibit A attached to the report. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Baum. So, okay, it's been moved, thank you. And seconder, Councillor Sanik, excellent. Any further discussion on the report? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carries, thank you. So the next recommendation is for Part B. This is the uncollectible tax write-offs and tax sale provisions under the Municipal Act. And we'll hear again from our Treasurer, Desiree Kennedy.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So this report is also looking for authorization to write off some uncollectible taxes. The committee may remember about just under a year ago, we brought a similar report here, which was a bit of a catch-up report. We hadn't done it in a number of years, and so it was a catch-up report that was looking at balances that we've determined are not collectible, not eligible for tax sale, that it just wasn't financially prudent to go through a tax sale process for the balances that were outstanding, and so we needed permission to just write those balances off of the roll. And we committed at that time that we would bring an annual report forward from here on in terms of doing a review and bringing any of those particular properties. So this is kind of our first annual report that we're bringing subsequent to that previous report. And you will see there is, again, there is a listing attached to the report of the various properties. It's about $6,000 that we're looking to write off. And it's with respect to a couple of different categories in terms of reasoning. One, in terms of inappropriate to conduct a tax sale, and that's often where we've got small pieces of land that it's just not worth going through the tax sale process, orphan lands through subdivision plan, that kind of thing. And then the other category we have, which is the bigger category, is where something is assessed in error by MPAC. And there would be a review process just to make sure that that is the case with MPAC, and in a number of cases confirm that either assessed in error, shouldn't have been assessed at all, or included in another assessment, so they're a duplicate, and so we need to just write them off. So the appendix shows you the detail of the properties. It totals about $6,000.
Much. Any questions from members of the committee? Okay, Councillor Stroud.
There was a catch-up report last time, and now we see this report here. Is this the type of thing we'll see on a regular basis? Is this like a regular occurrence now, this and the amounts of this nature?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. That's our intent, is to bring this on an annual basis. I might provide the caveat, if we didn't have any within a year, then you won't see it, but that's the plan, is each year we would bring this forward to you.
Great, thank you. Any questions from members of the public? No? Excellent, seeing none. We have a recommendation that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend the Council hereby authorizes the City Treasurer to write off uncollectible taxes in the amount of $5,806.38, of which $5,291.76 is the City's portion, and the amount charged back to the school boards and DBIA are $507.08 and $7.54 respectively for the properties listed in Exhibit A attached to the report. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Stanek, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Stroud, thank you. Any further discussion on the recommendation? No? Okay. All those in favor? Thank you, that carries. So our next item is the balloon release bylaw, and we have in our package here a report from the Commissioner of Community Services. And you want to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee members will recall that a motion from this committee was approved by Council directing staff to report back to the Administrative Policies Committee with recommendations as to how the city bylaws and policies, if applicable, can be amended to ban the intentional release of helium-filled mylar, foil, and latex balloons in the outdoors in Kingston. So the report you have before you contains those recommendations, and staff are also proposing a few revisions to three elements contained in the original motion. The intent of those proposed revisions is to act to streamline the regulation of bylaw releases, and that will allow for the public messaging to be simplified down to something akin to "don't let balloons go outdoors." And it also facilitates more effective enforcement, should that be necessary. So the report details the rationale for our proposed revisions to the phrase intentional or ceremonial release. We're proposing that the release of balloons be prohibited regardless of whether it was accidental or intentional. The end effect is the same. It's pollution and potential harm to wildlife. So it also, as mentioned, facilitates enforcement. If the officer observing the act of releasing of the balloons is not required to prove either at that moment or in court if a ticket is challenged, whether it was intentional or not, it eliminates that necessity. Second element that we were proposing a revision on is the recommendation not to limit the balloons that are regulated in this bylaw to just mylar, foil, or latex, in the event that there's some other material that balloons are made of. And again, it removes the requirement of an officer to prove that it was a mylar, foil, or latex. The evidence is gone. It's in the sky and not likely retrievable. So while it might be obvious, it just removes that issue. And then thirdly, the reference to helium field. The vast majority of balloons that are lighter than air gas are filled with helium, of course. There are, on occasion, balloons filled with hydrogen, although it's extremely dangerous because it's flammable. And again, the intent is to eliminate the requirement of an officer to have to prove or provide evidence of what the lighter than air gas was that was contained in the balloon. It's somewhat irrelevant if the balloon is filled with something lighter than air that causes it to be unretrievable and to travel a great distance before it comes down. So those are three elements that we're proposing that just tweak the original wording of the motion. We're proposing a standalone bylaw rather than amending existing bylaws, and the rationale is explained in the report for that. We're proposing a fine. You'll see in the report that it makes reference to the maximum fines and that those extremely high amounts, that's just standard wording that we put in all our bylaws now. But what I think really is relevant here is the set fine amount that would be associated with any ticket that could possibly be issued, if necessary, to a person committing this violation. And I qualify that because it's certainly not the intent to be going out and looking for people to issue tickets to, but a bylaw absent some deterrent fine, it loses some deterrent effectiveness. So we're proposing a relatively low fine of $25. It ends up being $40 total payable, it's called, because of the necessary victim fine surcharge of $10 and a court fee of $5 that has to be added to any fine. So we're proposing that, and one of the recommendations is asking council to direct staff to seek the approval for that set fine from the province. Really, the emphasis in the report, and what I'd like to reiterate, is that this is a attitudinal change that we want to bring to society. It's gaining a lot of traction now. A couple of examples, in the WIG a couple of weeks ago, there was an article about Clemson University, a big football program in the United States, and for every home game they release 10,000 balloons. That's been a 30-year tradition that ended this year when they decided for environmental reasons to discontinue that practice. Another example I found was CHEO, Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, had annually had a balloon release as a memorial, and balloon releases as memorials are quite common and quite an emotional event for people. But they have also chosen to replace the releasing of balloons with releasing of butterflies. So that's those are just two examples of attitudinal changes that we're seeing. And so this bylaw is seen as furtherance of that in our community. And so the emphasis will be on public education and awareness. Certainly we can start with where you buy balloons and where you get them filled with helium. Funeral homes and wedding organizers that might facilitate or promote release of balloons. And then also approaching the school boards to ask if they can add that to their curriculum for environmental curriculum, because children are very much associated with balloon releases. So getting the children's attitude to change, I think, will go a long way to gaining voluntary compliance with the bylaw. So I'll end my remarks there and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple quick questions here. So you mentioned basically the educational campaign around this, I think, and you kind of touched on it. The important reason is there's obviously, I agree with this, I think it's great, but there's going to be resistance to it. So you touched on it, and I think it's not that you shouldn't do it, it's the why you shouldn't do it. So I'm sure that will be covered in the communication campaign as to basically it's bad for the environment. The only caveat to that is one concern that might come up is I have a young child, they're walking down the street with a helium balloon, they unintentionally release it. Some of the fear might be that now somebody sees that child, is there gonna be a $25 fine for that? It's an unintentional release from a 6-year-old, let's say. We're not gonna go and charge a 6-year-old, right? We'll charge the parent? No, just, so something like that would not warrant a fine, right? If it was, the only reason I'm asking is because, you know, with young kids myself, I just had it happen the other day where we got one, and as my son was running in with it, let's go over it. He cried for 2 hours about it, but it was an unintentional release. So that's not something that's gonna be warranted for a fine, correct?
Madam Chair, thank you for that question. Yes, as we mentioned in the report, officer discretion, which is a big part of our enforcement of any bylaw, will certainly be exercised in this case. One of the reasons or the rationale behind including accidental releases and not just qualifying it for intentional is to impress upon adults who are supervising children the necessity to think about how to prevent an accidental release. So whether it's attaching a weight to the balloon, in California, if you buy a balloon filled with helium, it must be accompanied by a weight attached to it. Securing the balloon to a child's wrist, for example. That's the psychology behind it being a violation to be released for any reason. But certainly a decision being made about when and who to issue a ticket to, under what circumstances, the officer would assess from his or her vantage point whether it was unintentional or intentional. Certainly if there's a group counting down 3, 2, 1 and letting them go, that would be obvious evidence of intention. Whereas a child crying because the balloon's gone, obviously it's unintended. So was the event at a city facility? Had the parent who got a permit to hold the event, were they aware, as they ought to have been? Because one of our strategies here will be to include information with any rental of park space or about don't let balloons go. So that would be taken into consideration. So the phrase cause or permit does put an adult who may be responsible for handing out balloons, makes them accountable under this bylaw rather than, for example, a child. So no, we won't be issuing tickets to children. Whether we issue a ticket to an adult that's supervising that child would be based on all the circumstances.
So there is some discretion built in, obviously. And then my second question would be, I didn't see it, and maybe it's being considered now, but we know that everything, now that this is kind of coming to a head, somebody's going to design it, a decomposable balloon. So should there be some consideration to balloons that maybe are not environmentally, hazardous, coming out onto the market within the next little bit, kind of worded into the bylaw so that we don't have to go back 4 or 5 years from now if they become very prominent and say, if it's an approved balloon by the city that is decomposable and kind of poses no risk and whatever, let's say it's made of hemp fibers or something, and it has no risk or no negative environmental impact, would that be permitted? Like kind of some consideration for that, rather than having to kind of go back and redo the whole bylaw again.
Through you, Madam Chair. There are some municipalities that do allow for biodegradable balloons made of biodegradable material that don't have any kind of clip or clasp to them, so they're hand-tied. The contention in the industry is that latex is biodegradable, and there was a term used that it will degrade, the length of time to degrade is equivalent to an oak leaf degrading, but an oak leaf in cold water takes 6 months to completely decompose. And during that 6-month period, that balloon material fragment is litter. and the string or ribbon on it could pose a danger to an animal or a marine life. It could be ingested by an animal or marine life. So it's not, we certainly considered that because there are some municipalities that do make that concession. But the term biodegradable in this context, certainly the literature isn't very impressive in terms of how quickly it would degrade, and that would mitigate any dangers it poses to the environment. So our opinion is not to entertain that as an exception.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure it was considered. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Stanek?
Madam Chair, through you, thank you for writing this bylaw. Thank you for all the improvements that you made to the original motion that you added in, and for having it as a standalone bylaw, and for also emphasizing that education is what's really, really important here. As far as biodegradable balloons go, it's the string that is attached to the balloon that's just as bad, right? That's the thing that wraps around the wildlife neck, even if they don't actually eat the balloon itself. And I hardly paddleboarded at all this summer because we were canvassing and it was always so windy, but you would not believe all the balloons I found on the shoreline in the few times I did, and I'm going to be bringing them to the council meeting. And one thing with the council meeting, Mr. McLean, you'll be there, right, at the council meeting?
No pressure.
Maybe, but I have a conflict, so, but other staff that will certainly be well briefed on will be there.
Because for this, that's where you see it's like, $40, but if you read the bylaw, I'm just wondering if some people on council that are not part of the committee or the press, they might go $100,000, $50,000, and they might not understand the context. So some councillors that are not at tonight's meeting, they might be asking staff that question and going, is it true you're going to be fined $25,000? Because they didn't see how on page 20 it actually mentions the set fine. So just be warned, that could be one objection if we pass it tonight and it goes to council. And let's see, what else did I have to say? I'm just so happy with this report, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Stroud?
I think the last comment of Councillor Sanek's is something that needs a little bit more examination, so I'm going to ask a couple questions about that. So you said before, all bylaws are worded in a way where there's a maximum fine noticed, and it's probably provincial offenses of any kind that have fines are probably worded that way. Is that true?
Are you asking whether all our bylaws are worded?
No, I mean about like provincial offenses that have, like, say, littering or speeding or any kind of finable offense, non-criminal offense that carries a fine. Are they all worded with a maximum fine in that way, like a much higher number than the set fine?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. And just recently, the original maximum amount was quoted under the Provincial Offences Act, and that was $5,000. That still exists, but changes to the Municipal Act in 2007 allow us now to allow municipalities to avail themselves of those maximum fines stipulated in the Municipal Act. So they're considerably higher, as you pointed out. So on the recommendation of our legal department, we are incorporating that into all our bylaws. But in most instances, we are also seeking set fine amounts for each bylaw, certainly the ones that are conducive to enforcement through the issuance of a ticket. And so that's really the fine amount that is in play. Of course, nuisance party bylaw, that was an issue there where we sought a much higher set fine. Under the Part 1 ticket, the fine can be as high as $1,000. But yes, so there's nothing can be implied by the quoting of the high fine amounts in this bylaw other than it's a recommendation from legal services that all bylaws contain that. There are several sections, in fact, legalese sections that all our bylaws contain, including this one.
Okay, so the obvious next question for clarification would be in our educational initiative and also in our releasing this information to the press. So if the press were here and listening to the context, they might have a good, well-balanced story that explains, what, as you have to us, what's going on. But is there an intention to have a press release about this standalone bylaw should it pass council? And will it be clearly defined in one of the sections of that press release that the set fine is $40, notwithstanding the wording of the bylaw?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we can certainly ensure that that message gets out there, that enforcement of this bylaw will almost exclusively be through that set fine, if necessary. The only occasion where I can see a bylaw like this, a violation of a bylaw like this, prompting us to go to a Part 3 summons that would allow us to seek a higher fine up to the maximum. Certainly not anywhere near the maximum, but higher than $25 would be someone who was engaged in, say, mass release of balloons after being warned not to, that kind of thing, where the $25 would not be a sufficient deterrent. But the vast majority of enforcement, the limited enforcement I anticipate that this bylaw will require, will be through the set fine, or initially warnings, of course, too.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Great. More questions, Councillor
Thank you. I remember what my other question was. So where this all came about, it was 1 year ago, last October, where there was an article in the Whig that a group was doing a ceremony release of balloons. So if this bylaw passes, and if that same group or any other group, you know, we find out about that there's going to be a ceremonial release, could we then call bylaw, and then they would try to contact that group ahead of time to make them aware of the bylaw? Is that what like the procedure would be? Because last October, we didn't have a bylaw. There was nothing that the city could do to prevent that release.
Through you, Madam Chair, we definitely can do that. There's actually a couple of ways we can go about it. We can contact the group through our bylaw enforcement, and I think the particular event that you were speaking about was in Churchill Park. So we will also work with our colleagues in Recreation and Leisure Services, because that event didn't actually have a permit. So we actually reached out to them last October. That was step number 1, but we definitely can make contact with them if this passes, for sure.
Great, thank you. I was in Churchill Park, so okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so seeing no other questions for the committee, any questions from members of the public? We're good? Great. Okay, so the recommendation is that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to Council that the draft bylaw attached as Exhibit A be approved, and that pending Council's approval of the proposed bylaw attached as Exhibit A to the report, staff be directed to submit the required set fine schedule to the Ministry of the Attorney General for approval. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Sanik. Second by Councillor Stroud. Any discussion? Councillor Stroud.
I thought of another question. And I still don't know why this happens. So this is a completely naive question, but will this bylaw be getting all 3 readings on Tuesday? Or what are the next steps for this draft bylaw should it pass committee tonight?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have not requested all 3 readings for this bylaw. Also, my understanding is that based on the time frame between this meeting and the Tuesday's council meeting, that matters from this committee would not necessarily make the September 18th council agenda, so it would likely appear on the October 2nd agenda.
On October 2nd, we would do the first 2, and then on the subsequent council meeting, the 3rd reading. Is that how it would go?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, Councillor.
And the meeting after October 2nd is November, isn't it?
That's correct. There is no second. That's correct. There is no second council meeting in October due to the election.
That's the questions.
Time off, everyone. Okay, thank you very much. And so seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation? In favor? Excellent. Passes. Thank you very much. All right, so next we have the extended patio season item of our business tonight, and we will be hearing from staff, I believe. Excellent. Okay. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're here this evening to present report number 18018 in response to council motion regarding the extension of the patio season. Staff consulted with other departments in the city who are involved in the review of the patio applications for comments and concerns. As well, staff consulted with the downtown BIA and their membership. The report provides committee with the recommended amendments to the bylaw after consideration of the comments from the consultation. And in addition, staff is taking this opportunity to complete some housekeeping amendments that reflect such things as staff title changes and department name changes, as well as a process change that has been ongoing for years where the application is running through the engineering department as opposed to the clerk's office. All of the amendments that are proposed can be found in Exhibit A, the draft bylaw. And we're available for any questions.
Any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Stroud?
So from my reading of the report, the recommendation boils down to basically we can extend the hours. If you're, say, you're a business owner who has a patio and you're wondering about the outcome of this. So right now it's April 1st to October 31st, and there might be some time in March or November that you're interested in. So what the recommendation would be is you can apply for an extension of the time that would be on top of your regular patio fee, which is an annual fee, and a small administrative fee of $216 would be the added cost requirement should you decide that you want that. Plus, staff would examine the setup of the patio to see if winter control, should there be any winter events in that time, if the patio setup is compatible. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam. The new fee that's being proposed in this report is actually to address any applications that the city would see if an operator who currently exists and has a license is interested in amending their patio configuration to facilitate winter opening or cooler season openings. So in the bylaw, there's the opportunity to have heaters and there's the opportunity to have windscreens. Some of those things have not been identified by existing operators, and they require a review by our fire services, as well as they may require a review by a heritage application, or they may require a review by our engineering department. So we've proposed that in response to the possibility that somebody may want to modify their patio configuration to facilitate a longer season, that we would have a new fee in place for them to request a modification to their license.
Okay, so if I have a patio and I do want to have a longer season than April 1st, October 31st, I apply, I pay the extra fee, which is $216. I've got an existing agreement. That agreement is modified to be year-round then, like at the, as long as the facility is not interfering with winter control. Is that how it works?
Through you, Madam Chair, the current season is until the end of October 31st. And what we're proposing is that, subject to an evaluation by the Director of Public Works, there will be notification to the patio operators to extend the season by 1 month. The only people that would end up paying a fee are any owners that wanted to make physical modifications to their patio at some point in time. They may come in the spring anticipating that in November they're going to stay open and they want to have heaters. So we know that we have to do a circulation, we have to get comments back from departments to ensure that their proposal to modify their existing license is okay. Anybody else is paying their current annual rental. The annual rental is not altering. The only thing that's altering is if you want to change your patio from its current look and feel, that you would make application to the city to change it.
Sorry, I have to keep asking questions. I'm
okay.
confused now. So the result of the motion that we saw here is that staff has recommended that we allow a season of 1 month longer than what is currently April 1st to October 31st, and new applicants would have that season, and applicants who have existing agreements would also have that season, and the difference has to do with whether or not you're changing the physical. The fee would apply if you were changing the physical setup of your patio, because that new extended season may require modifications.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
So if I'm a business owner that doesn't have, that's willing to just roll the dice and see if there's a nice day, it's St. Patrick's Day is 20 degrees, I can open now. And if on Remembrance Day it's 20 degrees, I can open now with the passage of this recommendation.
Through you, Madam Chair, let me take a crack at it. So sort of one layer at a time. So the current season, being April 1st to October 31st, abuts against our current winter control season, being November 1st to March 31st, by design. The recommendation is suggesting that we cannot allow year-round patios. We are not recommending that that's an option. Through the consultation process, Ms. Brown has indicated that there was a shoulder season that is probably the most desirable requirement. When we looked at an earlier opening, so into March, what was really required is the opportunity to have a week at the end of March to set up the patio so that it can be fully in operation for the beginning of April. So that's one recommendation. The other shoulder, which would allow for operation through the month of November, is not an automatic, but it is subject to what the weather is going to be, and it would be at the call of the Director of Public Works in monitoring what the forecast looks like. And that extension may be made to allow people to continue operating a week in November, 4 days in November, anywhere up to 30. And if a patio operator chooses to do that, that's just something that we can facilitate. There's no extra fee above and beyond. But we also know that some patio owners, even if the weather doesn't call for snow conditions or ice, but it's cooler and we say we can allow you to remain open in November, they may also want to add some amenities to the patio to make it more comfortable. And if that's the case, then that's a new fee that we're asking for, because it's new work and it's new approvals and it's new circulations and those types of things. So if the patio owner doesn't want to make those alterations, that's fine. If the weather permits it and we can allow them to stay open through the month of November or a portion of it, there's no other change. I think I've got that correct. Thanks.
Okay, and what you're saying about the heaters and making it more comfortable, but that wasn't the subject of the motion, and I'm wondering why it's included in the recommendation, because currently there are patio heaters they get used in the current season that's allowable. So I'm wondering why that. I understand the logic. I just don't understand why it was volunteered, really. Because of the eventuality that a patio operator might add physical things to their patio without having been reviewed by staff, and the risk that was identified by staff. Is that the reason?
That is the reason. I mean, this process also underwent consultation, surveys, and public opportunity for input, and then there's the reality that the likelihood of a patio owner, depending on how our winters come in the future, I guess, the likelihood that a patio owner might want to alter their patio to provide some weather protection is much, much higher during the month of November than it's going to be between April and the end of October. So if the recommendation ultimately is broader than the original motion, it's because that's what some of the things that we heard through the consultation period, and we felt that it was appropriate to address it.
Final question. Was there any attempt to consult with patio operators outside the downtown BIA?
Chair, the reason that we consulted with the downtown BIA is that these patios are licensing to use public space, the city sidewalk, and we're not involved with patios that are situated on private property. We have not received applications for patio outside of the downtown business area at this point. We did consider in our consultation the possibility of the Williamsville district for sidewalk patios, but we have a cycling facility through Williamsville, and the construction of patios within Williamsville that would alter the alignment of the sidewalk would either impact the existing parking or impact the cycling facility. So we do not envision actually permitting patios in the Williamsville area.
Okay, I'll just make a comment on that subject that I do know of a restaurant that wants a patio that's not in the downtown BIA that does want to use city property for their patio. So that request may still be yet to come. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bohm.
Thank you, Madam. This is just a quick question on clarity. So if somebody has a patio within the normal time frame and they already have patio heaters within that time frame, and there's a motion to allow them, let's say, to continue to November 15th because we don't think we're getting any snow, they wouldn't have to change anything. Is that correct? Or is it at that point, if you're adding, like if they're pre-existing, they've already been approved with that permit, they're fine?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. They've already been reviewed and analyzed for their heater. So the fire department has already been involved in ensuring that they've used appropriate materials, if they've put canopies over top or if they have windscreens. It's for those applications that have not ever had that.
Okay, so essentially that be communicated clearly to them that they could kind of do it all in one fell swoop as long as they did it all ahead of time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, members of the committee, public? Mr. Dixon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to thank staff for the very thorough report and the really good answers, really good discussion from the committee so far. I got a couple of questions that are maybe a little bit extending out from some of what we had so far. You probably remember back in the middle of April of this year, we had a really major winter event. So that was actually inside the patio season. I mean, it had been warm and sunny for a lot of days before that. But this was like a really big storm. So I'm just wondering if you might be able to describe how that impacted on city's work as it pertains to dealing with patios, like sort of clearing snow around them as they were out there. So that's one point. Second one was to fit out a little bit. St. Patrick's Day is March 17th, and that's turned into a pretty major celebration in a lot of pubs in Kingston. So I've seen the weather nice, like sunny but cool, so that might be an attraction. Now, my next couple points are a little bit outside the maybe the realm of the bylaw, but I think they are relevant. Just one question is, I'm wondering if there's been any discussion on capping the number of downtown patios that we have, because there are a lot of them out there. I'm a patio person myself. I enjoy a nice day and a nice meal or drink outdoors on the right times, but certainly they're a major attraction to downtown. Tourism is really important. So, but I am wondering if that may be a consideration at some point for some discussion. And then my next point is tying into some of the discussion that came up. As everybody knows, we're doing a Williamsville Main Street study, kind of a redevelopment of that district along Princess. And I've seen a number of the proposals for redevelopment that have come up, and some of them do include the possibility of patios occurring. And I'm a member of the Williamsville Association, and we are looking to try to set up a Williamsville actual business association. There's only a few businesses that are there that may be interested at this point, but I can see a place like, possibly the Yellow Deli being interested in having one. They've got a nice location there. They've got some space on the sidewalk, so that might be something going forward. I think that more or less covers it. You put a lot of thought into it, all the eventualities. I'm really impressed with that, so that's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kidd, would you like to respond?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. So I don't have available a summary of the impact of last April's storm. If I recall it correctly, it was there was a lot of wind, rain, ice. The thing about April storms is they can always, they don't typically last long. The weather will turn again, and a snowstorm will turn to rain, and then all of a sudden it's diminished. So, that's a reality that we deal with in April. Our weather is changing drastically every year, and we just don't know. So I think we're still comfortable with that. To consider an earlier opening ever to cover St. Patrick's Day is a whole new issue and would potentially involve more research and significant thought, because you don't open a patio the day that you open the patio. So that's why that week in March that we've incorporated allows for a 1 week time frame for business owners to get their patio set up. So if we were ever considering St. Patrick's Day, the reality of it is that we'd have to basically allow them to start setting up around the 9th or 10th of March, which is still winter. So I don't think that's something for today. With global warming, maybe 30 years from now we can talk about it. There are capping ratios, so to speak, in the existing bylaw. It speaks to the number of parking spaces and the ratio of parking spaces to spaces that would have to be taken out of the system. So that's the capping ratio that we do have, and that's available to us. Ms. Brown has worked with a number of stakeholders, including the BIA, on the recommendations that are in this report. So, at some point when we start, if Williamsville does become an area of interest, it would be welcome if Williamsville had a business district association, and we'd be happy to work with them to work through exploring an opportunity to expand or at least to understand if we can expand what those complications are.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have the recommendation that the Administrative Policies Committee recommend to Council that the draft bylaw attached as Exhibit A be approved, and that this committee recommend to council that the draft bylaw attached as Exhibit B be approved, and that the amending bylaws be presented for all 3 readings to allow for the patio season extension to be implemented in 2018. A mover, please. Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Bohm. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Sharp?
Similar to what I said on the last item, so this is 3 readings because it's time sensitive so that we can pass it in October, on October 2nd, and then the extension would take effect on November 1st. And that's why it's 3 readings. If we left it, it would be the second vote, or the final vote would be in November 7th or whatever it is, and too late for November 1st.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? And it passes. Thank you. Thank you very much. So the next item we have is licensing payday loan establishments. I see there are still some staff here from Community Services. Go ahead, Ms.
Good evening. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Council passed a motion back in April of this year that directed staff to look at amending the licensing bylaw to limit the number of locations of payday loans establishments to no more than 1 per electoral district. So the amendment before you this evening will require the licensing of the payday loan establishments and limit the number and locations of the payday loan establishments to no more than 1 per electoral district. Through our research, we found that a lot of people who are using the payday loan establishment right now are lacking the communications and the education as to why they shouldn't maybe be using the payday loans establishment. So we've put in the report that the city itself would initiate a communication strategy to ensure that we provide the information to the general public as well as to those who are using the payday loan establishments with respect to counseling, et cetera. Under the provincial licensing, there is a requirement for them now as of July 1st of this year that they all post, and I had provided examples in your report, that they have to post a poster that shows exact cost of through the payday loan, through crediting, and through conventional loans establishments. The city, through the proposed amendment to the licensing bylaw, will one, require that payday loans be licensed. Currently, right now, they are not required to be licensed within the city. And secondly, that in addition to the poster proposed by or required by the province, that there would be an additional poster that will show credit counseling information where it's available, phone numbers, as well as the city's logo to ensure that people can follow up with the city if they have any additional questions. There's currently 7 payday loans establishments within the city. They will be grandfathered and allowed to continue, provided that they get licensed and that they meet all the requirements on a yearly basis. I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Stanek?
Thank you, through you, Madam. Why does it need all? You need the time, staff needs the time between end of October to get it ready for January 1st? Is that why all 3 readings would be at the October meeting?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So the licensing bylaw doesn't have the fee within it. I have a discussion in the report with respect to the fee that we're looking at, so we would have to amend the fees bylaw, which will then take us that time to have it all in place by January 1st. So that's why we are requesting the 3 readings.
Predict any backlash? I don't know who would give the backlash. Like maybe the current the cash payday loan establishments will be happy that we're not going to be adding more competition for them. I don't know. Do you think there would be more any backlash? And I don't know from who.
Through you, Madam Chair. During the preparation of the report, I spoke with Hamilton and Ottawa, and they have not had backlash. I mean, I think if you weren't grandfathering the current establishments in, there may be backlash, but certainly the current ones, the only change is that they have to be licensed. And a lot of municipalities are already licensing the payday loan establishments.
Other questions? I have a couple. Okay, so, and just thank you, by the way, for the report. I'm curious about, it references the information that will be provided along with the actual amount of loan repayment includes more affordable options, for example, or is that correct? My reading of the report suggests that there would be referencing to credit counseling, for example, but also that there's some reference to more affordable ways of getting cash. And so is that something that we can provide? And how comprehensive is that? Like, for example, would it include funds that are available through the Salvation Army for paying utility arrears, like pockets of funds in the community that exist to help people in those situations? Or is this, I'm bringing this up because I know when in doing the research for this, Ottawa, larger place, they have at least one, I think, cooperative model that's involved where there's a sort of a lending program, but it is a combination of a credit union and a social service agency that's doing that kind of outreach and providing the funds. So do we have something similar in Kingston as an alternative, or are we just kind of suggesting the get some credit counseling route?
So, so one's with the poster for the credit counseling, with that information, as well as through the city communication strategy. We would be working with social services. So if we get any questions through Contact Us, they can be directed to our Community Services Social Service Division, who can then direct them if they need assistance.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, the question really is mostly to do with like the proliferation of these establishments is what we're trying to deal with this recommendation. I realize that, and they're currently being used, but there is also an opportunity through this to benefit members of the public who are using them, I guess, and that's what the educational component of this seems to be. So that's great. Thank you. Councillor Stroud.
I just want to focus on the direction of one, limiting it, the exact limit. So limiting one per electoral district, which would mean 12 for the city of Kingston. So that's a total amount. Like, it's not Sydenham can have one, Williamsville can have one, Lakeside can have one. It's 12 total for the city of Kingston because we have 12 districts. Is that correct?
One per electoral district, yeah.
Right, but it's not relevant which electoral district. Like, it has nothing to do with each individual electoral district, is the question. It's just a little, the way it's worded, it might confuse people in the public. It's just a limit of 12.
Limit of 12, one per electoral district. So the amending bylaw is specific as to one electoral district. Right now, there's only, the 7 are located within 5 districts.
So this is what I think the concern would be. There's electoral districts sometimes change. The municipality is able to amend the number of electoral districts, and we saw, for example, in Toronto, the premier has tried to decree the number of electoral districts for councillors in Toronto at 25 from 47. And I'm just saying that if that happened in Kingston and we all of a sudden found ourselves with 6 or 4 electoral districts, that would, the bylaw would mean we would have a limit of 6 or 4 payday loan centers, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. But this is, so when we come to debate, I'm going to point out the problem with that policy. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take the opportunity to explain, since I was the person who moved this, and the rationale for the selection of one per electoral district was because that was what Hamilton was proposing, and the electoral district represents the sort of geographical area in which one might find themselves in need of, in that situation, and proximity when it comes to payday loans. Payday loan locations is sort of a key component, proximity within walking distance, for example. So just so you have the context, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Welcome, Councillor Schell. Councillor Sanik?
Chair, so I missed this point originally. So are we grandfathering these, or are we grandfathered, like we're letting them, so where we have the cluster 3 right at Bath Road and Gardner's Road, they're going to be allowed to continue?
Yes, Chair, yes, they'll be allowed to continue, provided that they continue to be licensed to the province, as well as get the licensing with the city, yes.
Great, thanks. Any questions from members of the public? Go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report from staff and the very good discussion so far. A couple of points that really aren't quite in there yet. What I'm wondering is if the 7 that are grandfathered in, if one of those, say, goes out of business, could somebody else step in and obtain the same grandfathering provision? And I guess the second question is, going along with some of the points raised by the chair, is there anything that actually compares the rates on what they're charging for interest across the 7 that are within the city? I don't use these myself. I don't really know anything about them. But I do know that the rates are very high, right? And it isn't maybe easy for the person who is using them, who may be struggling in one way or another, to be aware sometimes of what they're paying if it's a rate of interest that's, say, 3 times what the bank is charging, or 5 times, or maybe even more. So I'm wondering if it's, maybe incumbent upon the city, or if there is an agency somewhere, perhaps one of the external agencies that we have, there are so many of them in the city that do such great work, to actually have that information available. So you can go in and ask if someone is thinking about using them. You go into a community health center or something like that, which has the data available across, say, establishment number A is charging 17%, B is charging 35%, or whatever. And I'm just wondering if something like that, if it's been taken up by any other cities in Ontario. Like, we do a great job of researching by staff here, I think, within the city of Kingston, and seeing what other cities are doing, right? We're at the leading edge or very close to it on so many different areas due to the fine work by staff and the great questions from council. So I just thought of this as the discussion was coming up. I hadn't done anything myself on checking it, but if we can have that information, we might be saving people, a lot of time and grief on that. So thanks.
Anything from staff? Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. So one of the questions was if one of the existing payday loan establishments ceases, and it's within a district that already has one, there would not be another one allowed through our licensing. Your point with respect to education is very well taken. Our research showed that there was a study done through the Canadian government, and it showed that 74% of individuals that were using payday loan establishments thought that was their best option. But then they indicated that, so of the 74, only 20% said that that was their only option. So all the other ones had other options, as into using a credit card or using a loan service, but I think they were lacking the education. So that's a big component of this. One is that we're requiring the posters, in addition to the poster required by the province. So, and going to that question, the poster by the province does show what the cost is. So for a $100 loan, the cost per week, if you went through payday, would be $45. And if you were using your credit card at a rate of 23%, it would be $6. So that information is now going to be available, posted in all those establishments. And the third point was the city and our communication strategy, getting the information into our transit shelters, into our recreation facilities, working with social services so we can educate the public to show them that they do have other options.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our recommendation that we recommend to council that the draft bylaw attached as Exhibit A to the report be presented to council to amend bylaw number 2006-213, a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern certain businesses. That the proposed amendments to bylaw number 2006-213 take effect January 1st, 2019 to align with the annual fees and charges bylaw update, and that the proposed amendments to bylaw number 2006-213 be presented to council to receive all three readings to allow for the amended bylaw to take effect January 1st, 2019. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Rochelle, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Osanek, thank you. Discussion, comments, Councillor Stroud?
So the way it's written, there's two problems with the way it's written, and neither has to do with the intent of the motion. And I'm hoping that it can be, that it's not necessarily necessary to amend this or to defer it, but I need to explain the problems first so that we make sure we're not walking into something. First of all, let's just look at the chart on page 42 that has the 7 existing establishments. And we have to, before we even talk about the individual establishments, we have to acknowledge that this motion is probably not popular with the owners of those, well, it's three chains, so 7 franchises with 3 different chains, Cash For You, Cash Money, and Money Mart. So the owners of those franchises, we can assume, aren't too happy because universally, owners of businesses are not happy with new regulations that regulate their own businesses. So we're doing something that is unpopular with 7 business owners, yet we're grandfathering the existing businesses. That's not going to have the effect of making them like the bylaw, even though it's a favor by letting them to continue. And I'm wondering if the reason that we're grandfathering them is because we have no legal way of doing anything else except grandfathering them. So that's my question at this point.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Speaking with our legal department, we needed to grandfather them into the bylaw.
Okay, so then we're forced with we have 2 in Williamsville on Princess Street that are in direct competition with each other, Cash Money and Money Mart, Upper Princess Street in Williamsville. And then we have 3 at a corner in Bath Road, and I believe one of them is in one district and the other 2 are in another district, is that right? But they're across the street. So so technically it's 2 different districts, but really it's one physical location with all 3 competitors there, and that's not a coincidence. There's all 3 competitors at the same corner for a reason, is that they're in competition with each other. And so that's the aspect that's not dealt with this report, is how are we interfering with the competition of these 3 franchises that are operating currently in the city of Kingston. We've acknowledged we can't force any of them to close legally, but we're allowing them to have a sort of monopoly by limiting any further expansion. So if anyone else wanted to come in to, say, Bath Road Corner, it's already actually over capacity because it has 2 in one district and 1 in another. So no one else could move into that corner from a 4th establishment, is that correct?
Yes, Chair, that is correct. If I can add to it,
Sure.
Hamilton and Ottawa and Toronto have all done the same by grandfathering in. In Hamilton, they have more establishments than what they are, their electoral districts. So they are not even allowing any new establishments until the existing ones in many locations cease to exist. So there will not be any new payday establishments for a very long time in Hamilton.
Right. Yes. I think that the way that the Hamilton's bylaw is written is actually a function of the fact that they already have more than 1 per electoral district, but we're not in that situation here in Kingston. I think it actually would be preferable to limit the total number to 7, because that's how many we have right now. Just like we're not able to take any away, we also shouldn't be creating space for any new ones to come in if that's our intent. So in my opinion, we should be saying the limit in Kingston is 7, because the minimum we can set it at, because legally, and also a limit of 1 per electoral district, and then we have the grandfathering language. I think that would be more consistent with what we're actually trying to do here, is limit the proliferation of these types of establishment. Acknowledging that there is no middle ground here, there is no way to make these business owners happy with what we're doing. Why don't we just set it at 7 instead of 12 total, and then with the additional language? That's my question. Is there any reason we can't do that?
The motion passed by council was 1 per electoral district.
So I guess this is a procedure question. It would require a new motion to do something like that? Maybe Mr. Clerk can answer that?
Well, in this case, staff are responding to the motion as requested. I mean, all motions are possible to be amended. Staff is following direction from a council motion, so I don't know, it's kind of a gray area, unfortunately, so.
Right. Well, maybe I'll let others weigh in, but I am going to consider making an amendment that changes that, just that one aspect, to limit the total number in Kingston to 7.
Councillor Sanik?
Madam Chair, if we do look at setting the limit to 7, I think we should get Lego's opinion if we're actually allowed to set the limit to 7. Not that I'm in favor of one way or the other, but to me that sounds like a Lego issue, and I'm wondering if we should then do a deferral back to staff to get Lego's opinion, if that's something, a direction that we're allowed to even consider, just to know what our options are. Deferring. Oh, yeah, but you think that's okay? Yeah? Okay.
Can we stop saying that word for a minute?
Okay.
Are you asking the question?
Okay, so I'm considering it, and we might do another round of discussion.
Okay, does anyone from staff want to weigh in on deferring? My perspective on this at this point is that staff have already done consultation and research, and it would require significant more time to produce an amended version, but I will leave it to staff. So Councillor Sanik is asking what the implications would be of a deferral, though we're not seeking that at this time. We're just asking, would it involve, I'm suggesting it might involve more consultation, more research, et cetera. What would that look like?
Staff does not have an issue with any deferral and additional review and consultation with legal.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Sanik?
My only other comment is, like, does it have to be January 1st? Right? If we did defer it, it would come back, like, maybe to the November meeting, and then if the bylaw comes back as being in effect March 1st, I know that you were the mover, Madam Chair. Does it have to be January 1st?
Maybe now I will, Councillor Sanik, thank you. Okay, so in bringing this forward, the recommendation for the number of, to Councillor Stroud's earlier point, to the electoral districts, there was some discussion at council, even at that time when we limited it per district, that people would have difficulty accessing them, and that their right to access a legal payday loan operation might be infringed upon if we were to limit the location to that extent, was sort of the concern that people who might feel they need to access that service weren't able to do that. So that was the rationale, again, behind the 12. Certainly, as the mover, and this was a member of the public who brought this forward, but the intention all along was to restrict the number and to have licensing. So we've heard tonight that we're moving in that direction, and that's possible, and that's great. I certainly would like to see them limited to to 0. And to Councillor Stroud's earlier point about the business implications and the competition, these are not normal businesses. This is not a normal business practice. This is precious money lending operations, and the province has gradually gotten involved in this situation. And what would be most beneficial would be to see the province move further to limit the amount of interest fees paid on these loans as they did in other provinces, Alberta, I believe, and Quebec, which essentially is driving them out altogether. So that's the sort of end goal, I would say. Though at this point, I think if we were to limit, and I feel like I'm discussing a deferral, which is like so not what I'm doing, but to go back and limit further at this point, I think is problematic in that we are not dealing with some of it won't be moving forward in the way that it should for a number of reasons, one of which is that the people who might feel impacted by this would be further impacted by further restrictions on the numbers. So I will return the chair. Shall, thank you.
Thank you. I'm coming in this. I think you just made it actually a very good argument for the companies to say why they wouldn't accept the 7 locations, that you're limiting people from being able to access a service that's legal, so that the 1 per electoral district makes sense. There's one near the credit union on Gardner's Road, but maybe it's not an official payday loan place. But the woman we talked to at the credit union said a fellow just wandered in because he thought the rate was a little high at that place. And she said to me, I don't know why people ever use those horrendous places. And she opened him an account. And a lot of it is education. I mean, to me, this is the biggest part of what we're doing, not the 1 per electoral district. It's starting to give people information who don't have the faintest idea it's around. And that's absolutely vital. And, it'll be a couple going in and it'll be the wife reading it and going, well, wait a minute. This is what, to me, counts. People use these payday loans because they don't know what else to do and they don't feel comfortable going into a bank. It's a whole social reasoning and lack of education, and dad did it and stuff. So I'd rather get this moving, actually. Particularly in terms of getting this information out there fast to people so that we'll start to get a few of them at least out of that horrible trap they get into, which is so ugly. So I'd rather just get her done. 1 per district is in effect 12 instead of 7. And obviously they're not in the outer districts because they don't think the clientele is there that actually has enough money to use them, which is incredible. So I'm all in favor of moving on. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Stroud.
I agree with Michelle's point about the most important thing is to actually get the awareness piece moving. An amendment doesn't necessarily slow things down, a deferral does. So I guess you've convinced me that I would not support a deferral, but I still want to make the point about the amendment. So currently Sydenham doesn't have one, and I can speak fairly confidently that the people that I would hear from Sydenham don't want one, and they would want me to make it so there wasn't one. And that's not what this does. This allows, because Sydenham doesn't currently have one, Sydenham has the capacity of 1 at the moment with this bylaw passing. Same with Portsmouth, and same with any district doesn't currently have one, actually Kingston as well. And there are 3 in the downtown, or 4 in the downtown, I guess, if you include the 2 in Williamsville. And that's obvious. The logical reason that's where the demand is. To the point though about what about people who don't want to access the services geographically? We need to make sure we're not restricting them. Accessibility, in other words, is a concern. And I would say you got 4 in the downtown, 3 at Gardner's Road, and that's it. You have two sort of geographical areas that everyone in Kingston is currently using, all on transit routes. I don't see that it's valid to make sure that you geographically have one in every district. For one thing, the people in Sydenham that want to use them can go to the downtown ones because it's actually closer to the downtown for most parts of my district than it is to the other side of the district because it's a long and skinny district. So that actually, the geographical argument isn't very good either. I understand the intent and I agree with the intent. I just don't think there's very much upside in leaving the number at 12. even though that was in the original motion. I think at sober second thought, which is what I'm doing here, it's better at 7. I'll make the amendment. You guys can do what you like with it, and so can council, and I'm duty bound to make the amendment. So if you just give me a moment to write it out.
Just a question for staff in this process. So we heard a little earlier that the licensing was what was limited per district, right? So that if one, when the question was asked about if one left that district, would there be another license available? And I believe the response was if there's already one there and one left, a new one couldn't come back in. The grandfathering is just for the existing business. Is that correct?
Yes. So if there's 2 in Trillium district or Williamsville right now, if one left, they wouldn't be allowed to bring another one in.
Okay. So then, if we're talking about, we're not really talking about anything more to do with, I guess I'm curious what the amendment's going to say, but I will wait. Okay, folks, we're going to reconvene, please. All right, so I will draw your attention to our amendment. Moved by Councillor Stroud, seconded by Councillor Schell. That Schedule PL-1 attached as Exhibit A to the report be amended by inserting the following special condition after Special Condition 1. 2, that there shall be no more than the current number of licensed payday loan establishments. Okay. Okay.
Do we need the words "in the city," or is that already implicit in the conditions?
The staff is suggesting that we add no more than the current number of 7 in order to
Make it crystal clear. And do we need to put in the city, or is that all? That's obviously it's the bylaw for the city of Kingston. Okay.
This is committee best. Everyone is contributing to this amendment, to the cause here. Excellent. All right, so there we have it. Moved by Councillor Stroud, second by Councillor Schell. Any further discussion or questions? No? Okay. I will call the question. All those in favor?
Oh, we got to, oh, sorry, never mind, we got to move on seconder, sorry.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah. Whew. Okay, so all those in favor? Let's do it again. Ready? Yeah. All those in favor? Yeah. Excellent. Is that good?
Anybody opposed? No. Okay.
No.
Call it, so.
Okay. Now we will go back to the motion as amended. Okay. And I will need a mover for that, please. Oh, we do. Look at that. Okay. Okay, yes. So we have a mover and seconder for the motion as amended. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carries. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on. Now we need a motion to resolve into the Board of Management for Rideau Crest Home. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Stanek, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Schell, thank you. All right. And we have a report. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. This report contains information from June 2018 through to the end of July. Rideau Crest Home has maintained an occupancy rate for 2018 of 99.0%. Rideau Crest had 3 incidents reported to the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care through the months of June and July. The Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care did not visit the home in these months. There are currently 397 people on the waiting list for the home. 265 of those waiting are for a priority who are actively seeking or requiring admission to long-term care. Which of these 18 are crisis placements? There are no reported outbreaks for the months of June and July. Updates for the home: we implemented a new nurse call system, which was completed over the summer months and is functioning appropriately within the home. The home is continuing its work with CUPE on reviewing current scheduling practices within our Within Rideau Crest, the home is actively seeking the assistance of a consulting group in partnership with HROD to do a fulsome review of scheduling and collective agreement language challenges that the home and staff are having. Financially, as of the end of July 2018, Rideau Crest Home has spent 50.7% of its municipal contribution, which is $318,000 under budget. This does exclude a number of commitments that are already made to the end of the year, as well as large payment of invoices that have not yet been paid. As well, there are timing costs for the summer months and leading into December. And I leave that open for questions.
Questions from committee? Go ahead, Councillor.
This should be a short one. I noticed in the staffing announcements a new nurse practitioner. So what is the total complement of nurse practitioners operating at Rideau Crest currently?
Sorry. So practitioner in the home, we have 3 physicians who visit the home for a couple of hours, a certain number of days throughout the week. And the nurse practitioner we've just made full-time. So she's there Monday to Friday to try and mitigate transfers to hospital, to try and deal with things that physicians don't need to be called for.
So it's full-time Monday to Friday, and this is new as of June. Prior to that, there was no nurse practitioner?
She was part-time. We've just recently made her full-time. So she was 4 days a week and is now, the need is there for 5 days, so that has been moved to that.
That's great. There's 2 nurse practitioners where I work, even though we're surrounded places crawling with doctors, literally. But it's a very important role, and I can see how it would work really well in this setting, and I'm glad you've gone full-time. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw?
This is sort of for the future. Under the new government, have you already had your budget frozen? Is there anything come from Queen's Park to do with money?
So we have had any updates most recently. The budgets have been set. There's actually been a number of incentive and programs that have come through earlier this year that we're just following up in now. But as for 2019 and for the future, we have not heard of any new legislation or programming yet in terms of funding.
Thank you. Okay, I just have one quick question regarding the scheduling and the use of a consultant. I'm not sure if this is happening at this point or if it's something that would be involved in the consultant's work, but is there currently the software has been developed to help with scheduling? Is that something that's been in use, or is that something that you would be looking at in this?
So we currently have a scheduling system for, we call it Gold Care, so it's been implemented in the home for a number of years. The issue that we're having with scheduling is the collective agreement language indicates staff, full-time staff is whom we're speaking of most, are to receive every other weekend off and then 2 days off consecutively throughout the week. So that very much limits how we can schedule. So staff are working 7 days in a row, having two days off, working 3 days and having 2 days off. So that 7-day in a row stretch is very tiring to the staff, especially in long-term care now. It's getting more and more physical, as well as emotionally demanding. So staff are becoming tired and burnt out. So we're looking for a consultant to come in and give us some options of scheduling that they've seen within the sector, within long-term care, as well as some collective agreement language that maybe we could utilize within our current collective agreement.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? No? Okay. So, right, okay. Can I have a motion to rise from the committee? Okay, excellent. Councillor Stroud and Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Excellent. And, all right. Okay, so, thank you again to staff for the report. Now, we have received the report, which is an information report. And, okay. Now we're moving on. So we have no motions, and we have no notices of motion. Any other business? Seeing none. No correspondence. Date and time of our next meeting will be Thursday, November 8th. That's good. Okay, excellent. I have a motion to adjourn, please. Thank you. All those in favor? Carries. Thank you.